It's so small.
This is not the greatest camera setup ever made. This is just a tribute.
That's right. So you ready? All right, here we go. Good morning, Bitcoins. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin and how they got here. Today we're joined by Vlad from Bitcoin Takeover podcast and magazine. How's it going, Vlad?
Hi, Thomas. It's good to see you.
It's great to be here. We're here in Majorca. You can see the sea behind us. It's an amazingly beautiful day in the sunshine, and that's why all the Bitcoiners are inside listening to talks and speeches.
Yeah, I just did my speech. I presented this magazine, but I'm going to let you ask the questions. I don't want to take, part of your time.
Well, we're going to start off with everyone's most favorite and familiar question. Vlad, what was your first computer?
It was an Olivetti M24 that my father bought me in year 2000 when I was 8 years old. It was a Pentium 1 with 166 megahertz, if I'm not mistaken, running Windows 95, only 16 megabytes of RAM, CD-ROM unit, which we bought later.
Yep.
It did not come with an audio card. At the time, it was a big deal to have an audio card, a sound card.
Yeah.
Like the Sound Blaster or whatever.
It was an add-on card that you'd put into the motherboard. This was before they started putting everything on the motherboard. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we got that one, and it was a big deal that we could use the computer to listen to CDs and Winamp and all of these. Applications.
So what did you do with the computer? Because I remember when we got the Pentium chip, we could play TIE Fighter and X-Wing faster than we could before. What was your experience?
Well, in Romania, we did not have access to much stuff, but the computer did come with some video games.
Yeah.
One was called, so it was an MS-DOS game with motorcycles, Grand Prix or something. Very basic, but at the same time it was exciting.
Yeah.
My previous experience with gaming was on a Nintendo clone that was popular in Eastern Europe.
Nice.
It was called, so in Russia it was Dendy, in Romania it was Terminator 2, in Poland it was Pegasus. Basically the same device but branded differently.
It's funny, once you're already making a clone of a device, you may as well name it after a popular movie. Terminator 2. What could go wrong?
There were no copyright laws until 98 or something, so they could do a lot of stuff. At one point on Romanian television, this was before I was into computers, but they had these Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum clones that were running cassettes.
Yeah.
And at one point they would have this show about computers and they would say, start your cassette recorders and you're going to get a free game.
Wow. And you could record the game right off the TV?
Yeah.
Did you ever do that?
No, my cousin did.
Cassette tapes were just before my time. I never got to use one, but I always read about them, and it's always fascinating to think about because I used it so much as just an audio device, just listening to Walkmans and stuff like that, but never as a computer data storage device. But how fun that they could send out through the computer basically the codes and the tones that you would put on the cassette tape, and then for the people at home, you would rewind the cassette tapes, you could play the program, right? And in the same way that you might read a program line by line, imagine it coming like beep by beep from a cassette tape, basically, right?
I guess that can be a good way to store your Bitcoin private key.
I'm sure it is. I remember back in the day, Theo Goodman was working on a project called like a Bitcoin record, and he would put your private key on a physical vinyl record, and then you could play it back to get your Bitcoin in the future. But of course, if someone steals your record, you're SOL.
What's SOL?
Shit out of luck.
Oh no, you don't want to be SOL. So
you were playing games on the computer. Did it lead you to more computer applications, or was it a big part of your life after that?
Oh yeah, it was a big part of my identity. I used to talk all the time about computers. I used to daydream about having the ultimate system. There were all of these computer magazines and I would browse them and look at them and be like, oh, so if I have enough money, I can buy this motherboard and I can put this processor. At the time, the latest generation was the Pentium 4 and I was having the 1.
Yeah.
And I was watching these magazines and being like, oh, this is so cool and I can do this and that. I would even set the budget and be like, oh, I have let's say $1,000 and I can make this system.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's super incredible and I can play these games theoretically. You know, I was just a kid daydreaming about having a better computer.
Sure.
Because at the time we had all of these import taxes. Before the fall of communism, it was not even allowed to have a computer.
Sure.
So it was everything about it was new and super expensive, inaccessible.
Definitely.
There is a story, there are multiple stories from Romania in the 90s when people were trading their cars or apartments for a color television.
Whoa.
Because it was so rare, it was so hard to find that to have a color television was a statement. It was basically saying, I can afford this. So I guess everyone regrets it right now, giving away a house or something for a television.
Sure.
But yeah,
At the time, you had shows to watch. You were, going to get that TV.
They didn't even have shows to watch, that's the irony.
Oh, no.
But if they wanted a VCR, that was even more expensive. But it was cool because you could get these video cassettes and you could watch movies that were banned at the time.
Nice.
So
I recall a similar story. I was talking to a guy about his first computer, and he said his father had brought him home a Sinclair in his suitcase from London, and that was the only way where he lived, same kind of thing, that they could get access to any kind of computer. And it was such a big deal to have it there, and that his father was able to bring it back. So it's really neat the way that family often brings into this, and a lot of times you're in a place where maybe you think you wouldn't have technology, but the technology finds a way and it makes it to you. And then it allows you to do more things. So did you go on to learn more about computers? Did you do programming or Photoshop, video editing? What kind of things did the computer allow you to do that you couldn't do before?
the first one, I think I only played games and I learned how to use MS-DOS from,
That's
that
pretty
ugly
good.
terminal.
Yeah, yeah.
And Norton Commander.
Sure.
And
antivirus, keep the thing clean. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. There was a lot of stuff to learn and everything seemed so exciting. I think the most advanced video game that I ran on that computer was Wolfenstein 3D.
Oh, wonderful game.
But I was not even aware of Doom because I could run Doom, but I did not find it. At the time we had floppy disks that were circulating from one kid to the other, and someone would bring a game and then you would find out that it also has viruses because the floppy disks are not read-only, they're also write devices. So when you connect maybe an immaculate floppy disk into an infected computer, it's likely that the virus will also get transferred.
Well,
So
especially when it was loading the disk, it would kind of boot up the disk and it would start it a little, and that was a chance for things to get inside,
yeah, it was very thrilling. And the best part was that I would have to reinstall Windows every couple of weeks or something.
I used to do
It
that
was
all
breaking.
the time as well, all the time, yeah.
I was getting viruses and be like, oh, okay, I got to start over.
Well, and that's, for a kid, that's part of learning computers, is breaking them. Unfortunately, you lose some data sometimes, your parents get mad at you, you break the computer, but with software, not with hardware, you can kind of flex it, you can kind of twist it, and then you can go right back to the beginning, format the hard drive, start again, and what you're really learning is skills that you'll later use in the IT departments. You'll be like, oh, I'm suddenly useful to all these businesses because of all this time I put in on my own, just because I wanted to learn it. I wanted the game to run faster. I wanted to have more games, more disk space. So you delete the Windows system files, and then the Windows stops working. And then you got to reinstall the Windows. So now you just learned your lesson. Don't delete the Windows system files.
Yeah, don't do that. I mean, today it's a lot harder because they're hidden.
Sure.
And you get a warning message that no, you should not touch that DLL file or whatever.
Back then you're like, I could use an extra 5 megs, and I don't even know what system.dll does, so it's gone, baby.
Exactly. But also back in the day, I've learned how to program in Borland Pascal, which was, actually I used Turbo Pascal, which was supposedly
much
faster.
Much faster.
I don't know what the previous one was like. But I was going to
always
this,
worse, always worse.
I was going to this former communist, like Palace of Children, that's the name of it, Palatul Copilor.
Yeah.
And it had all of these clubs for everything, for painting, for photography, for sculpting. And there was a new department after communism, obviously, for computers.
Yeah.
And there was a woman in her 50s who was teaching Borland Pascal.
Wow.
And she started out with BASIC, obviously, because she probably dealt with a ZX Spectrum or a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, but at the same time, I did not really see the purpose because this was the year 2001 or something. And the stuff that we were writing in Borland Pascal was how to add up two numbers or
Sure.
how to display something on the screen. And it was not exciting for a kid. Like you would think, okay, I did that, but what's the point?
I felt the same way when they were teaching me things like arrays, and I would dump numbers into an array, and I would take numbers out of an array, and I'd be like, why am I doing this? What am I doing? But later on, when a friend of mine showed me PHP and MySQL, and I was dumping data into a database, and I was taking the data out, and I had a desire, I wanted a blog, I wanted to be able to update my blog and have it run easily. And so, with his help and with a book, of course, a big PHP book, I was able to figure out how to make a little rudimentary blog. And for that, programming was easy, and I understood the whole thing. But when they were trying to teach me like C++, or especially assembly, which it was a big no-no for me, but it was just so complicated, so complex, I didn't understand the programs that we would be building. But I suppose later on it would have made more sense if I'd stuck with it. So did you stick with it? Did you become a computer programmer?
No, I did not, but that was my dream. When I was a kid, I discovered id Software games,
Sure.
and these guys were my heroes. I wanted to
Absolutely.
be John Carmack.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I would read about him in magazines, and I was like, I want to be this guy. But then I stumbled upon lots of roadblocks, and I guess I was also terrible with my time management as a teenager, because I had internet access, but I did not have that curiosity, that drive to pursue this knowledge. I waited for teachers to teach me in school.
That's right.
Because I was doing computer science classes. But I never went too far with that. I mean, I graduated from a high school that was specializing in computer science, but then I went and studied social science in university because I kind of lost interest. I started out at the age of 15 in high school, 14 actually, wanting to become a programmer, and by the time I left, I lost interest in it. I was like, this is not for me. I did not enjoy it. I'm gonna try something else. Now I partially regret it, but at the same time, I know my limitations. I know that when it comes to coding, I'm not a genius. I can replicate something, but unless I have this philosophy, unless you're part of the 1% and you can be very good at what you do, it's kind of pointless to be mediocre just to make more money.
And eventually you could rise up, your skills could get better. But yeah, I do agree, and it's so hard with coding to know like what it applies to. And to know that you can teach yourself, because there was a point where there wasn't a video on YouTube to explain how to do everything in the world. Now there's a point, oh, you need to rebuild your pool filter. There's 10 videos of incredible experts, some good at making videos, some not good at making videos, who will explain it to you, and if you watch enough of them, you would figure it out. In the same way, when I wanted to learn how to buy Bitcoin in 2010, all I had to do probably was type into Google how to buy Bitcoin. But I was such a big computer user, I was like, I should just know how to buy Bitcoin. And then I didn't, and then it passed away, and I thought I forgot it for a few years. I read about the EFF taking it, and I read about the EFF not taking it, and I read about this and that, and every time I'm like, I should type those words in and I should figure this out. But sometimes you have a block where, even though it might be really easy and completely within your capabilities to learn it, if you can't, kind of humble yourself and say, especially now, Google it or Chat GPT it and be like, just ask it anything that you're thinking of, and there's a chance you can learn it because of this incredible internet that everyone's built together. But it wasn't quite like that then. We weren't quite there yet to Google how to be a programmer.
No.
How to make a game. How does Mario Brothers work? How does a side-scrolling background work?
Yeah.
Like, once you'd figured it out, it would have been easier, but without that first step of Googling, that first step of curiosity, and then being able to, accept that you don't know. You're good at everything, you learned everything. A lot of us are, kind of on the genius, gifted class type thing, and we think that we should know everything. And if you admit that you don't know something, it's a huge failing. But if you can get past that, you can learn so much more in so many different directions. It's very nice. It's very
Something
freeing.
which was not exciting for me was the graphics. I remember in the 7th grade I made a dice game in Borland Pascal.
Sure.
And it was not exciting. At the time in the 6th grade, that was the year 2003, the graphics were much more advanced. I wish I had access to a graphics engine or something. By that time you already had Unreal or some other resources. but I didn't have a powerful computer to be able to run that, and there was nobody around me who could teach me. Right
Yep.
now, I think you have all of these tutorials on the internet on how to use it.
Yep.
I think you even have free access to the Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
And unless you're making a certain amount of money selling the game, they're not going to charge anything,
Sure.
which I think is incredible. You have all the assets, you have everything to build something that's incredible, and you don't even need to understand how it works to know the coding behind it,
Yep.
which I think is just mind-blowing.
Things were much more low level when we were starting. You were really writing your own lines, you were debugging your own lines, whereas now, I don't really know, but as they tell me, people use a lot of libraries, they use a lot of pre-made commands, and then they stand on the shoulders of giants, and they can build incredible things and incredibly quickly. So yeah, it would have been amazing to get involved in that, but after you didn't go into programming, how did you go from the computer to getting into Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I read about Bitcoin for the first time in 2013. I was 21 years old, and I spent about 10 minutes, I can still remember.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a stupid idea. Why would anyone want this?
Sure.
Like, I have a bank account, right? I can send money to whoever I want. I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
buy stuff with this. Who's going to accept Bitcoin? The government is going to ban it. But I kept on paying attention. And in 2015, I was an exchange student in Paris. And I was 23 years old, so I guess I was a bit more mature.
It takes a few years for it to sink in sometimes.
I was
It
basically
happens to the best of us.
handed the opportunity from a university professor on a class about innovation,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
told me, do this presentation about, it was actually blockchain, but you start with
Sure.
Bitcoin when you research that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did the presentation and I treated it just like homework. And then I didn't buy because it was like $400.
The price was
During-
too low often. Yeah.
During the bear market, it was $400,
Yeah, yeah.
down from 1,000.
Oh, that was hard times, man. We had a small car, and then we didn't have a small car anymore. It was gone.
Anyway,
I'd never lost a small car before, you know. It's stressful.
I wanted to buy a few months later in January of 2016.
Yeah.
But that's when Mike Hearn came out with that statement
Oh,
about
sure, yeah.
Bitcoin being a failed project.
It's doomed, yeah.
And it went to all of the big financial publications.
Sure.
And I remember reading that in my room and I was like, oh, I'm so happy I did not buy Bitcoin, it's dead.
Oh, I know.
But the next year, when the price came back to 1,000, I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah, why is it not dead? Is
I saw a
general?
disconnect.
Many people feel that, where it's like, why is this thing I read about that was dead not actually dead? Yeah.
There's a disconnect between what the media tells you and what's actually happening in the markets. And that's when you start asking questions.
Yeah.
And that's why I also wrote this, because it took me 4 years from the moment when I read about Bitcoin to the moment when I bought.
Yeah.
And I want people today to not have the same constraints, to not have the same doubt.
Yeah, I remember my first idea when I was reading about it early on was, I was like, well, I'll make a copy of that. Everything I've done on the computer, I make a copy of it, I give it to someone, there's more games, there's more music, there's more everything. And in the same way, I was like, this is fantastic, let's make a copy of money. Now I can spend twice as much. And of course, they had solved that in the double spend problem. But if you look at it from a computer perspective, copying it, I think is one of the first ideas that comes up. And then it takes a few years for it to kind of set in and for maybe it to go down and up, for it to die and come back to life, where you say, maybe there's more than something there, maybe it is kind of like a DOS or a Linux or something that just grows and sticks with you and it keeps becoming more and more powerful. Because I know when I looked at it the first time, I looked, it was a command line program, and I was like, very obviously, I was like, this is World of Warcraft money. There's no way you're going to be able to trick normal people to use this, especially if it's command line, as it was in time. We didn't have iPhones, we didn't have apps and tablets and these things. It was just, the world. And then, things kept going, and when I looked in on it a few years later, like Coinbase and BitPay had made these really easy to use websites where if you were a merchant, you could accept it. If you're a normal person, you could buy $100 on Coinbase, see how it goes. And when I saw this, I was like, wow, the infrastructure is really there. Like, this is something I could promote and tell people, you can go to a website, you could buy this, whereas before I'm telling you, get a command line, download a program, sync a blockchain, type in your address thing. You know, it wasn't quite there at that level.
But I think Bitcoin Core has always had this graphical user interface with Qt.
Yeah.
So the first version on Windows was actually user-friendly as much as...
I think there was also a disconnect for me because there wasn't a Mac version yet.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not really a valid excuse, but at the time I was sadly unwilling to go to the store and buy a PC and come home, and I was very capable of running a PC. I just didn't want to. I'd spent 10 years helping people with Windows problems and crashes and losing documents and wasting my time installing drivers and other complexities that don't really matter to me. And I had a break where I couldn't go to Fry's and buy a Windows computer, take it home, and push the mining button in the Qt thing, which would have dropped in who knows how many of a Bitcoin a day. Because at the same time I looked at it, and you know, every time you're like, oh, it's 3 years ago, I could have bought it. And I said, those people that bought it like under $1, they're smart. I'm dumb. I didn't get it under $1. I'm so stupid. And then it goes to $30, and you're like, well, I'm doomed now. I didn't get it at $1. And then I saw it go to 300. And at this point, I finally just gave up, and I'm like, well, I was stupid last time. I was stupid the time before. I'm stupid this time. You know, I don't have any money. I have like $1,000. I'll get 3 of these. You know, put it all in, whatever. Try to figure this thing out. And then then we went on the crazy run to 1,400 and then back down, and then the rest is, you know, turned out really well. But it's all about breaking through that first purchase, that first article you're reading about it, to the second, to the third, to the fifth. Like Andreas talked about, going down this rabbit hole of information where pretty soon he's thinking about it all the time. Was it like that for you once you had gotten into Bitcoin?
Yeah, it was interesting because when I got into Bitcoin, it was the golden age of shitcoins and ICOs. And the temptation to chase the latest trend was great, and I had no proper understanding of decentralization or security or whatever.
It's hard to tell what to value, especially some of them have professional marketing departments, beautiful graphics and logos, you know, people that'll talk to you and email you back if you have questions. Whereas a lot of the time, Bitcoin, lacking a marketing department, lacking a leader, Satoshi being a shadow, disappearing, didn't have any of those things. So it's hard for us to compete, I think.
Yeah, plus exchanges have their own way of describing these coins to make them look actually competent or worthy or used by someone.
Sure.
I remember reading about Ripple XRP, and I was like, oh, this is for the banks. I mean, the banks are not going away, right? So
yeah.
I actually shorted Ripple at $1 in January, I think, or December of 2017.
Yeah.
And I lost all my money because it went to $3. But then I was right, you know?
Yeah, eventually.
So the timing was off, but the intuition was correct.
So how did that lead you to want to create your own podcast and then eventually your own Bitcoin Takeover magazine?
Well, it's a long way from starting my own project. No, actually, from starting to work in the space to starting my own project to deciding that I want to do my own magazine. But it all came naturally. It's just that I kept on chasing my curiosities. And what drives me is just this selfish, I guess, feeling that I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And when
but you also want to share that, is what I see.
Yeah,
you want to share that knowledge with other people. Some people, they learn more and they hoard that knowledge. They keep it to themselves, and they think maybe I have like a technical advantage over the others. But you wanted to share. You wanted to educate.
Yeah. Part of the reason why my podcast is not super successful is that it grows with me, meaning that when I learn something, I use that information in the next interview. So for some people, it's hard to keep up. It's not newbie friendly. It's more for intermediaries, OGs, people who care about this stuff. And I more or less willingly narrow down my audience. But I'm happy about the quality of the listeners.
Yeah.
And I praise them all the time because I don't deal with stupid questions. Not that there are stupid questions, but I don't deal with people who ask me what to buy and what to invest in and stuff like that.
It's more fun to talk about an advanced question or a philosophical idea or thought about the future or somewhere where we could go. And sure, everyone has to ask the price and they have to ask what to buy. That's their first two newbie questions. But after those, it's a variety. It could go anywhere, right? We could talk about anything in Bitcoin and it would be more interesting than the price and what you should buy.
Yeah, and on the topic of the price, it's funny that when you first get in, you think that people know stuff. You see them tweeting with great confidence, and you're like, yeah, this guy figured out something.
Sure.
And then you realize that the emperor is naked. You realize that even Barry Silbert has no idea what's going on, and he is very screwed the moment that GBTC starts going down.
Oh, it's been amazing to see the Winklevi and Silbert, both like absolute titans and kings of this industry a few years ago, now locked in a battle over the Graystroke Trust and all kinds of disagreements, and they lent the money out to SBF and FTX, and the money didn't come back, and the 7% returns also did not return. So it's interesting how they seem to know everything. They had a great strategy, buy a bunch of Bitcoin early and hold, but then they kept building these businesses, and they kept building these complexities, and who knows, maybe you in the audience will end up with more Bitcoin than the Winklevi, or more Bitcoin than Barry Silbert, which previously was unthought of.
Yeah, and it's not just about that. My point was that nobody knows what's going on. It's a decentralized global financial network. Anything can happen. It's a free market. Most people are frightened by the idea, and I can understand why. I was too. And maybe that's why you hang on to these hopes that there's someone out there who's watching out to make sure that the price doesn't drop below a certain level or whatever. It's human psychology, and it's incentives, and it's a free market. You have to embrace this chaos and learn how to navigate through it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gonna go crazy watching charts. And
it is funny the way people do search for like a guru, someone who can read the charts for them, look at the triangles and tell them when they should buy and when they should sell, because then they don't have to take that responsibility for themselves. They say, I bought because Joey told me to buy, and I sold when Joey told me to, rather than your own truth and your own, taking your own chances and risks. It's their outsourcing. Yeah.
I used to look up to Tone Vase.
He's
and
a
then
nice
he
guy.
shorted
I like
the bottom.
Tone. It's fine.
He shorted the bottom into 2018, I think.
Yeah.
And everyone was laughing at him. There was also, do you remember the hyperwave theory?
It was Tyler and.
Yeah, he passed, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. He was a wonderful gentleman. We actually interviewed Tyler right here on the World Crypto Network on Proof of Work. His first computer, it was a banger. It was an electronic calculator. And it's hard for you and I to really understand, but to have that ability of like advanced calculation, even with the brr, 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 and it spits out the little numbers, and he was like a stockbroker, an accountant type person. It was incredible. It was amazing to have even a calculator. But yeah, good old Tyler Jenks and Leah and the hyperwave theory.
Yeah, it was saying basically that the price is going back to 1,000.
Yeah, they said that many, many times. I remember it was their drum bell. Whenever you'd say anything, they'd say it's going to 1,000, and then what did it go to 1,400 or something? It went to like 2,000. It went close.
No, it went to 3,000.
3,000.
Yeah.
3,000. Not close. Not close enough.
No.
And especially, I remember some of my friends sadly were saving their firepower, and they were saving their firepower, and I was like, maybe you should buy 10%. Maybe you should get 20%. Get a taste of this price, because you don't really know it's going to 1,000. He was a big fan of Tone, and he waited and waited and waited, and I don't know that he ever got to buy. So
that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But part of the beauty of this is the personal responsibility. You have to really learn this. And you have to learn how to manage your funds and understand that there is no safety net. There is no one to bail you out.
People were horrified last night. We were telling them how if you lose your password, if you lose your Bitcoin key, it's gone forever. Gone. I mean, maybe there's a guy here, he says he might be able to recover it, but other than that, gone forever. So it is very much like an adult currency, a money for grown-ups. And even though a lot of people are grown up, I don't know that they want to handle that responsibility.
No. I mean, I'm not happy about the fact that we get Bitcoin banks and we get people who invest, for example, in MicroStrategy, thinking that they get exposure to their Bitcoin reserves. It's very hard for me to process, because that's not why I got into this, and that's not my understanding of what Bitcoin is.
Yep.
If we end up having large custodians and we trade Bitcoin on their balance sheet, what was the point of all of this? We replaced the money, okay, but Did we
Well,
make
we
the world
traded
any better?
one group of oligarchs for a new group of oligarchs. And if you think Roger Ver, the Winklevi, and other people like them are better than Gensler and the Treasury and the IRS or whatever, then perhaps we have a chance. We have to believe in our technology people. But yeah, it wouldn't have succeeded in the way that it could succeed if that's all that happens. So what are you working on now in the future? Where can people learn more about Bitcoin Takeover podcast and magazine?
I have a very conveniently short domain which I bought. It's btctkvr.com. You open that one, it's gonna redirect you to bitcoin-takeover.com, which is the actual first domain which I bought. BitcoinTakeover.com was taken and I could not get it. And I expect the guy who has it to message me at some point and be like, oh, I want 10 Bitcoin for this. And I'm gonna tell him to go F himself.
That's right.
I don't need his domain.
No.
But that's where you can find all the information about the podcast, the magazine. This is an open source project published under the Creative Commons Zero license, meaning that you can print it yourself, you can sell it, you can modify it, you can do whatever you want. There is already a German translation of this one, which is 100% done, but I only need a bit of feedback to be sure that it's high quality. And then I'm going to open source it. I'm working personally on a Romanian translation for the community in Romania and for my parents because I want them to read this. And there's also a guy from France who wants to translate it in French and a guy from Brazil who wants to do it in Portuguese.
Nice.
Last year I also had a Spanish translation. I'm gonna try to get that one too.
Definitely.
Because the Spanish magazines never ended up in Spain, but they went to El Salvador and they went to Argentina at La BitConf.
Nice.
And I think they could have made a difference in some people's lives. I want to thank Joshua from Voltoro because he paid for 200 of them to get printed.
Well, it sounds like a great project. I know Andreas had a lot of luck with the online translation of his book. They worked together as a team and they came out with it, and then multiple people all over the world can enjoy it.
Yeah,
it's also very laudable that you're doing this as an open source project where other people can change it, modify it, make their own version, which again, the information in here can spread better, hopefully, because of that open source approach that you're doing.
I think it is, because people started working on translations. But my point is that I think Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos is an incredible book, possibly one of the top 3 right now, even after all these years. But the reason why I'm making a magazine as opposed to a book is that the book requires commitment. You have to read it from one cover to the other. It tells more or less a story, even if it's technical. But this one requires no commitment. You open the magazine, for example, at the mining centralization article, it takes less than 10 minutes to read it. And then if you have concerns about this, you're going to learn why it's not as bad as you think it is. And you might give this project a chance, or you might consider it under a different mental model.
And the magazine, hold it up again, it's really easy to read. It's really well laid out. It reminds me of Wired magazine or any of the other kind of modern magazines where the graphics and the little charts and things, they draw you into the article. So it's not just, it could be just, black text, white page, but there's graphics, there's articles, it really is a rich product you've made here.
I took advantage of Midjourney this year,
Definitely.
and I created these graphics because I realized that what AI does is not necessarily create something very accurate according to your description, but it gets style.
Yeah.
So if you tell it, do it in the style of Andy Warhol, like I have computers as if Andy Warhol drew them. If I tell it to do something that's in the style of Picasso's Cubism, I also have this one. Wait.
Nice. Oh, that's great, man.
So I think that this is going to make people feel more attracted by the content, or at least feel intrigued. Like I even have Art Nouveau, which I think is the most beautiful, if you ask me.
It's lovely.
And I love this because actually this is also the first edition, the one that we printed here in Mallorca, to feature these graphics which are hand-drawn by a German artist.
Nice.
His name is Bitcoin Apex, and basically I had AI art, but then I saw his and I was like, can I use it for a new edition.
Yeah.
Because I think we should support local artists, not just local, but community artists, and highlight their work. Maybe they're trying to make a living out of this, so
Sure.
the fact that I get to present their work means that they get more exposure, so they become part of the culture.
Well, it's such a pleasure for them to be included in a magazine and to tell their friends, my art is in a magazine. It's very cool. So one more time, where can people buy it and learn about it?
To download it for free, you go to btctkvr.com, and there is an online version that you can read, and there's a GitHub version that you can download. And if you want to buy it, you can get it from shopinbit.com and parallelnipolice.com/shop or store. I'm not sure either of them, but it's their merchandise store, and they're based in Prague. Soon, I think Ellen Bits is going to sell one, their own edition, in their store.
Yeah.
And I'm also in discussions with Crypto Cloaks, and they're the only ones based in the US with whom I am talking.
Cool.
Because I also want to have a US distribution. And it's not just distribution, it's production. But if you're going to Tabcom, for example, this year, you're going to get 50 copies that you can grab for free.
Nice.
I mean, please only grab one and leave the rest of 49 for someone else. And if you're going to, what else? Baltic Honey Badger, you're going to find a few of these. I'm trying to get them at conferences, to bring them, to show them to Bitcoiners, and maybe make them think a bit about how they can use this to convince a skeptic that they should give Bitcoin a chance. Because the approach is the opposite. Usually books try to teach you stuff. This is trying to start from the assumption that you don't want to be taught because you have these doubts. And that starts from the doubt, and it deconstructs it. So I think that this approach can be effective in many cases, or not, but at least it makes them think about it more, as opposed to, I think people tell new Bitcoiners that they should read the Bitcoin Standard.
It's very difficult, very heavy economic type reading,
I don't think that's the only problem. I think there's only a certain ideologically driven group that's going to be drawn to these ideas.
Sure.
You need to have a certain mindset about government and about central banking to be able to fully get that. Because it's very likely that someone who is more left-wing is going to read it and be like, this is bullshit. And they're going to think that Bitcoin can only be used by these people. And I guess there are guys in the space who like the idea that we create an echo chamber of like-minded people.
I would disagree with that. I think we need both sides of people, both groups of people, and they contribute in different ways, and they like different things about Bitcoin. And I think together, much like diversity and multiculturalism and so forth, it makes us stronger. We need everybody's contribution. Everybody should be a part of this. And I've also talked about how people should talk to their own groups and their own subcultures, and I'm really inspired by Lamar's work with the Black Bitcoin billionaires about how they're exciting their community. They're teaching them basic things about Bitcoin. They're teaching them to hold $100 in Bitcoin and see how it goes. And it's just so exciting because I can speak to the computer nerds and the Star Trek people because we're the same, but only really they can speak to their communities, to their people, to get them the information which they really need. It could really change and help their lives, and or just teach them how to use Bitcoin, get them jobs in the future. It's so inspiring. It's really great to see that happening. And in the same way, for you to be spreading it in multi-languages, multi-continents, different conferences. It's a really cool project. And thanks so much for joining us today, Vlad, on the interview.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoyed it. And now I want to go buy one of your magazines.